Welcome to Distracted Driving. I'm Sean Genovese.
The podcast, not about driving. Sorry, I just made that up. I'm
Sean,
Rex Williams. All right, do we want to do that over? Sorry.
No, we're gonna
Okay.
we're gonna do it live. Yeah. So to be clear, Sean Genovese is not the podcast. Although I don't know, maybe some people.
It was something about the title that made me say that. Welcome to Distracted Driving.
I didn't say the Distracted Driving podcast. Boy, look at us getting distracted with the intro.
With the intro. This is why we're professionals. Don't try this at home.
Can't even make it through welcome.
Welcome. I'm Rex Williams. I'm here with Sean as the co-host, and sometimes I say some things. Not very good, but I throw it out there.
Well, good or bad or indifferent, we have part two today of our conversation with our friend Michael Erickson.
Yeah, he's awesome, man. He's just a unique individual and so much insight, and he thinks visually, so he's always drawing stuff. It's super fun.
You said that about Andrea 2 weeks ago, by the way. You said, she's just awesome.
Oh,
it's okay.
Well, it's true.
They can both be awesome. All of our guests, I'll tell you right now, all of our guests are going to be very special. Awesome. They're going to be awesome, and you're going to enjoy them.
You'll be in awe.
On this episode or this part of the conversation, we talk a little bit and find out about Michael's team. When we interviewed him the first time, he was trying to get what he does established as a skill code within the company. And bless you. For those of you not watching, Rex was good enough to hit
I had a big old sneeze, but I had the mute on, so I think I'm okay.
Yeah. He was trying to get what he does established as a skill code and really make it into a thing. Because he's just a guy. He's just a guy what draws, as he likes to say.
The guy what draws,
and has managed to stay alive in various existing skill codes, but doing what he does. And so when he said he had a team, that was definitely something I wanted to dive into, and we do.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something interesting. Because one of his team members, I think, is classically trained as a graphic designer, and
one's a cartoonist.
Graphic designers communicate, and one thing that we didn't talk too much about on the first part of the conversation is, he helps people find the holes in their thinking, and he helps facilitate communication. But before you can communicate, you have to have synthesis. So you have to put things together. And then you're doing that so that you can reach coherence. And only when you have synthesis and coherence can you communicate. And so when he said, the problem with graphic designers is they communicate, and that's too late. That's too late for what he does.
So
later. It's interesting to hear how
but he's training
her,
and she's learning.
Yeah,
she's
absolutely.
She's very open to learning, and she loves the challenge and stuff. So yeah, she's great too.
And he's going to talk a little bit about raw capture, and he's going to give us some advice. And so more stories coming straight ahead
with Michael Erickson.
So we're gonna get out of the way. So you mentioned you have a team now.
Yeah.
Does your team? Did you teach them?
Yeah.
These skills, or were they artists to begin with?
They were artists to begin with, but they had grown up under the same. If you do art in school, the first thing that they do is make you into a graphic designer. And I have wars with graphic designers. It's not that they're bad people. It's not that they're intentionally off the wall, but they're focused on one thing, and that is communication, which means that you've already got it figured out. All you have to do is say it right. And so we'll design the packages of the messages. When you get a graphic designer in the room, they'll say, so what are our messages? And I'll say, we don't have any yet. Well, why are you bothering me then? So because you're going to help me find out what they are. We're gonna dig down through the ideas and the knowledge shift. And I've got two people, and we're trying to get a third one. the two people that I have, one is a cartoonist, and cartoonists are really good because they're not typically so tainted by the structure. We have a lot of linear structure in our education, and most of the cartoonists are kind of like a loose cannon. So a little bit, they're a little bit. And the other one is a very well-trained graphic designer, but and they're both women, and I love it because they have a more of a cross-connected brain. And so they can follow the chaos a little better than even I can. And I can do it because I practiced a long time. But they came by it more naturally.
Distracted.
Well, they do get distracted, but they get distracted and they can connect it. Yeah. And so connective thinking is what we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with analysis, we're dealing with synthesis. And so we put things together to understand them. We get in a room full of analysts, we're tearing things apart, and I'm in here putting things together, and so are my team. So I had to teach them about, first thing I did was I got an old Don Martin, a book. Don Martin was one of the Mad Magazine cartoonists from like the 1970s. And this guy is the king of what we call static animation. He makes things look like they're moving, and sound effects. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy, like I've been in this comic book to work. What are you doing? We're doing serious engineering. I said, no, you need to look at this. See how he makes things move. See how even though the paper doesn't move, the ideas move. And so I had to infect them with static animation and cartooning. One of them already kind of knew it, but then I got her to go further. The other one, the graphic designer person, it took her a while, but she has good art skills. Her people are very elegant. And so she can create a user story that you believe. And now helping her to get them to move, now she's up above it. And that was cool watching that happen. And then, of course, there's the idea of what do you do when you're in a raw catch situation? And we call it raw catch because you're in a room and people are talking and you've got to grab what they're saying in real time. So you start with a blank piece of paper. And
I love it when you do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had to teach them. And the one who's more graphic designer oriented, she was a little bit frightened by that.
Yeah.
You know, and,
well, it's like writing. You know, you want to. If you're going to be a successful writer, you can't get it all right the first time. You just have to start writing and then go back.
Yeah, and
you have to catch it, like you say.
So we make an assumption when somebody's in a presentation space, and this is what's called graphic recording. We assume they've organized it. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the main point. Okay, so you can kind of pick the upper left part of the corner as a starting place, and kind of aim at the lower right corner as the ending place. All bets are off in the middle, but eventually you can get some kind of flow, and you depend on the speaker to give you the flow. Now, if you're dealing with a technical person, they start in the middle, work out like buckshot in all directions. So we actually have to develop a kind of a non-linear listening method, and that's harder to teach, but these ladies are getting it. It's kind of a capture, cluster, connect, relate model, pattern match. Technical people will, you ask them what they're doing, and they'll tell you what their latest problem is, and you ask them, well, where would you start? And they won't. In fact, we had a consultant come in at one point in one of the Boeing projects who was trying to figure out some artificial intelligence stuff. And he said, so let's take a simple problem of designing, say, a curtain in an airplane, for the interiors. Where do you start? And the engineer says, well, and he led us on this long wandering story. And what was so funny is that the consultant was at the whiteboard. He's like this, waiting for the answer. And he was like this for 2 hours. Okay.
Didn't write anything down.
He wrote nothing down for 2 hours, but he's posed like to write it down. Like, well, but where do you start?
Waiting for the finished product.
He was waiting for the finished product. Meanwhile, this engineer was talking systems and connections and FAA regulations, and I'm in the room. I thought, oh crap, stuff's going by. I got to grab it.
Yeah.
So I grabbed a whiteboard and I started catching just things that sounded important, but I didn't know what they were and I didn't know how they were related. But I just started getting them down. And the guy, he was like, "This is what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, don't pay attention to me. I'm catching stuff, okay?" And
I'm just the guy what draws.
I'm just the guy what draws. That's right. So in about 40 minutes, I had that whiteboard filled, and I flipped it around and pointed to the guy and asked him a couple questions. So this and this and this are important to the story. Oh, and he starts talking to the whiteboard. So I grabbed another whiteboard and I started filling that one up. Only this time I turned it around so people could see. And then I had to leave after the second hour, but it turned out that because it was a non-linear problem, whenever you're dealing with interiors of an airplane, you've got all these things you got to worry about. Like if you're going to change the color of a piece of cloth, the chemistry of the color has to be tested for fireproofing. Or you're going to kill somebody.
It's huge. Fireproof.
It's huge, yeah. So, and that's just one thing. Then you've got all these other things and sourcing, and so there's not one place to start. There's kind of this, So the guy is standing.
There's a place to start, yeah.
Well, and it's different every time.
Yeah.
So you have to create this kind of this, and this is what heavy engineering is. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a simplistic linear thing. You won't start, do the thing, and you're done. It's a big dynamic interplay. And so you have to do this nonlinear listening. And so a lot of times I hear words, I don't know what they mean. I don't even know what they are. I've never heard the word before, but I better grab it. Sounds important, better grab it. And pretty soon I end up with this kind of a cluster picture of various, kind of looks like, here you can see, you can probably just see marks on the page, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. For those of you listening at home, he's drawn marks on a page.
And now, and
they look like little lines.
Yeah, like
marks,
like they're representing words. And then pretty soon you get little central connection points, and you end up, and they become clusters. Now they don't start out that way; they become that. And now you start to see the relationship between these clusters, and now the clusters start to have, and there's some kind of a connection. And now you define what that connection is. So see, you can see that kind of a lightning bolt shape and
in between the two clusters.
It turns out that becomes important. It turns out that connection is something to do with the data, the process, the regulatory, the people, the skills. Ultimately, this stuff will form into like a 10 or 12 dimensional picture. And I can draw in 4 dimensions pretty easily. You do the height and the width and the depth, and you do that with stick figures, like a stick person. He's tall, he's got width, he's got depth. And then you put a swoosh arrow behind him, so he looks like he's moving, and that movement is the 4th dimension. So you can depict past, middle, you can get for time, or and then you wire in other stuff. You can take a 2-dimensional chart. Let me quickly draw a 2-dimensional chart. Okay. So you see, like these kind of charts, like a bar chart.
It looks like a vertical bar chart.
Yeah, and they're 2-dimensional. They have a height and a width, right? Well, it turns out if you stretch one of the dimensions, like if you stretch, here, I'll do it like this. Okay, see on the left?
Yeah, now it looks like you've rotated it around to the right, and we're looking at it at an angle.
It appears to be a wall on the one side of the page.
Yeah.
It's the same drawing, it's just a little taller on one edge than the other. You can stretch the bottom, make it look like a floor. You can stretch the top and make it look like a ceiling. You can create 2-dimensional objects on every side of your little stick figure that's moving. So you've got 4 dimensions in the center. You got 2 dimensions on 4 sides, sometimes in the back. You can use the back of the page. You can get a 10 or 12 dimensions of information flowing into one spot. And everybody who, like the finance guys who care about this part, and the engineering guys who care about this other part, and the regulatory guys who care about that part, and the supply chain guys, and the facilities guys, and the myriad of other technical disciplines that are required to build something complicated like an airplane, they all see themselves in the picture. And they all see their connection to the other guy, and it's like they're not enemies anymore. They have to somehow have a part, and they have to cooperate. And oh my goodness, whoever imagined that?
Yeah.
So my experience with engineers, we love to be very precise and very accurate. And I've chided people before that, hey, listen, we don't need to be precisely wrong. We can just be wrong right now. As you were sketching some of that out, though, that popped into my head, because I know I've tried to have a conversation with other technical people, and you start writing something down, and you're just trying to maybe get the gist of it. You're doing that raw capture like you're talking about.
Right, raw capture.
But then they just get wrapped around the axle about how, well, that part's not right. How do you, or what advice do you have for keeping the conversation going when somebody is now just fixated on, well, no, that's not right. We have to stop, and we got to talk about how that should be 0.65 instead of 0.66.
So I back them up and I say, so what are we really trying to do here? Okay, what's the big picture idea? Okay, so the measurement that you're using right at the moment relates to an instance of that. But what's behind the instance? the instance of like, okay, you got an airplane of a certain sort, or you got a pick anything, pick a typewriter. Don't make typewriters anymore. Typewriters have parts, and parts have certain interplay. People forget why you made the typewriter. Oh, it's to make print. Right. Okay, cool. Can you get paper into the thing? Can you get the paper out without tearing it? What are you really trying to do here? And back them up a little bit. But if they do start getting hung up on the nuances, I'll play along. I'll say, okay, this is what they care about. Get them to dump their story, and I'll draw it, and then I'll show it to them. And that's usually when they discover holes in their thinking. Now, it's a little bit time consuming, but what happens is you've held their design space for them long enough for them to get it out of their system, this thing they have to say, and then you can get behind it. This is particularly important when you got people who want to debate. You get technical rivals or fight, and they love it. They think, debate, that's the way we'll get to truth, right? They walk into the room with 10 things each, and then they assassinate the other guy's 10 things. and at the end of the battle, and it is a battle, it's like a sword fight.
Yeah.
There's like 3 things standing on each side of the table. Everybody can agree to these lesser collection, but everybody knows it's off. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel thorough. But it's all they can agree. So they do the designing on this anemic collection, and everybody feels, like, ooh, well, yeah, that's they're uncomfortable. I will make them fight with the drawing. I'll show them what they said, and pretty soon coming in as a cartoonist, or coming in as that guy what draws, I'm like the amateur in the room. So they feel quite content to talk down to me, or to instruct me. And sometimes I know more about them they think I do, or maybe even than they do, which you never, it can never be an ego thing. And you just pull it out of them, and then as they see it, then you start asking questions. Yes, but what's behind it? And in the debate scenario, you've got an either or condition, and you see this across the world right now. Everything is black and white. There's there's conservatives and liberals, but there's always a question behind the question. What do they all really care about?
Yes.
Like even in the political spectrum, which is I try to stay out of desperately. There's everybody wants to have a place to live. Everybody wants to have a job. Everyone wants to be safe. Everyone wants to be secure. All these things, so now the current, whatever's been presented as the way to get there that way, well, those are 2 perspectives, but we live in a multivariate universe. There are lots of ways to get those things without those 2 things having to declare war on each other.
Yeah.
And so when you get behind the question, then you can ask what's the real issue here? What are we really trying to do? And it changes their thinking. And you don't have to do anything but just hold the space. You don't do anything to them. You just pull until something new emerges, and it's like, wow, that was so cool. And you don't have to declare war. You don't have to defend anything. You don't have to fight. You just tease it out of them, and it's dynamic emergence in action. Chaos theory working for you.
Boy, the getting people to check the ego, I think is I'll speak for myself. That's one of the hardest parts for me, is just finding that mental space where, all right, fine. Let's draw what you want to draw. Or let's talk about what you want to. Let's go down that path. So in an attempt to start to park the car here,
we're getting close to the end.
we gotta respect everybody's time, but we covered a lot of stuff there for people that are listening that maybe are technical. Everybody probably works in an organization, and I'm sure most people can relate to a lot of the situations we've discussed. What advice would you give to somebody who really just wants to get to, I think you described it to me before as you have to get to coherence so that you can actually communicate. So what advice would you give to people to help them achieve that coherence in whatever space they're working in, whatever topic they're discussing?
So for me, it's all about pull. I don't try to say I have an answer. I don't, even if I might have what I think is a cool idea, I'll offer. I say, well, I thought of this, but tell me what you're thinking. and then capture it. And then kind of help them argue with themselves about it rather than you argue with them. That gets the ego out of the way. I'm basically holding the design space. And so, so one of the first guys that I ever worked with when I first came into Boeing was a highly skilled, but also rather, he had a kind of a loud ego. And I was the temp at the time. So I was just less than this, I'm the kind of person, you wipe the floor with, but one day he came in so frustrated and he looks at me finally and says, well, maybe you can help me. And he tells me this story. And I drew something for him that had, actually he was talking about architecture, enterprise architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up drawing a picture of this of the Enterprise from Star Trek, and pretty soon he's taking apart the decks. He says there's a top deck, a middle deck, and a bottom deck, and these are the layers, the three schema architecture, and here's the engines, and here's the different processes. And he created his own analogy, and I just kept pulling. He was so proud of that picture. It was like one of the very first sketches that I did with the Canvas software, and he had it printed on a T-shirt and would wear it.
Yeah, it's so funny.
But
he was talking about the enterprise, corporate enterprise, and so you put in the Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah, and then but see, he was also talking about how this will launch you into the future. So we got the vision part.
Right.
So I tapped into his vision and helped him see his vision, and then gave him a way to describe his vision.
Yeah.
And then as he beat up his own thinking, got more precise, like engineers will do.
Mm-hmm.
He fleshed out some of the crazy stuff that might have been otherwise blocking him and made it understandable to others. And he used that to create dialogue across the rest of the enterprise. And it made a difference for him. I mean, even professionally, it made a difference for him. And I'm sitting there smiling to myself like, yeah, here's another win. Because I helped this guy get where he needed to go. Now, it did not improve my wages any. So if that's what you're in there for, you got to ask yourself what's really motivating you. I was totally enthralled with the idea of I'm in the airplane business. Woohoo. I mean, okay, I'm a high school dropout with 1 year of college. I have no business being here from all the traditional, I'm this guy that had to figure out how to survive. And so I started drawing. And then I ended up in this place and one domino kicked over another, and here I am. I think I've become some kind of a short-tail systems engineer over 30 years. Okay, because you get exposed to enough stuff, you're going to learn. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But it's always been about helping them see what they're saying, and refining what they're saying, and letting them discover their mistakes. So you're not challenging them. You're not trying to force anything. Some of the worst mistakes I've ever made in my life were with me trying to force something to happen. No, that's a backfire. You invite, you pull, and you and when it goes bad, because it will sometimes, especially I'm a cartoonist. What's this cartoonist doing in here? Get him out of here. He's an idiot. We don't need these idiots around.
We're gonna go over the cliff with the TNT.
Yeah, and do the Wile E. Coyote thing and go splat. And I'll sometimes draw the Wile E. Coyote just on the way out, just so they know that I got this. I got the message. But they come back to me later and say, that Wile E. Coyote kind of helped me realize I think I need your help.
Yeah.
So you just help people.
Yeah. And you get business. So that's great.
Speaking of helping people, as we wrap up here, I know that most of your work is done internally for the company you work for. People, though, might be interested in learning more about you or what you do. Is there a place that they can go to learn more about Michael Erickson? So
look up Michael N, like not, Erickson on LinkedIn. I've got some things there. I do have a really bad webpage that I'm embarrassed about. So I'm kind of less inclined for you to look there because it's not yet coherent. I've actually been developing a cheat sheet. Yeah, I'm I have.
It's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a document I'm creating. I'm calling it my envisioneer's cheat sheet, and it's about halfway done right now. I developed it for my Saudi friend and didn't get it completely done in time for him. I gave him part of the information, but I'm intent upon finishing that. And I'm going to put that someplace. Probably LinkedIn, though, is probably the best place to start now. I'm also on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. That document you're talking about, did you share part of that on LinkedIn already? I remember seeing.
No, that was something that came before. That was and that was where people were trying to get examples. So I called it. What did I call that? Anyway, there's this document that's got a lot of hand drawings on it. It's kind of like the modus operandi of a envisioneer. That's available. That's available.
It was cool.
Yeah, you go out on LinkedIn and you can grab that, and it's downloadable, and you can
Cool.
look at it. I'm not greedy.
Well, we will put a link to your LinkedIn profile on the show notes, and people can go check out. It looks like it's called Michael's Envisioneering Theory and Scope Summary.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
for
folks
finding
can
it.
check that out.
You remembered it better than I did.
Well, I pulled it up. I'm cheating.
Yeah.
I got the cheat sheet here. So that'll be on distracteddrivingpodcast.com. And I think that's a great place to park whatever vehicle it is that we're driving today. This was great. It's always a pleasure and enjoyable to talk to you, Michael. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for all your stories. It's so great.
Okay, user stories are a big deal. So story is the heart of a lot of stuff. So you guys are right on track with what you're doing with stories. Getting the stories and getting people inspired, that's cool. Go forth and be powerful, okay?
We're trying. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Thank you.
That was about as good a sign off as we'll ever get, Rex. We're gonna leave it there.
What do you mean? I'm not gonna do.
No.
Don't be distracted.
Nope.
Driving.
That was perfect.
Okay.
In fact, just to make sure we don't ruin it, I'm gonna stop recording.
Oh no. We need.